Hi again. We're in Kenneth Scott Latourette, The History of Christianity, page 157. Christianity takes shape in organization and doctrine. He's discussing the resurgence of Arianism after the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea, from which so much had been hoped, did not bring enduring peace to the Catholic Church. Indeed, no council which has claimed to be inclusive or ecumenical has ever done so. Here and there, a regional council has helped to restore unity in a particular area or in a segment of the Church, but many, perhaps most, of even these have failed. Ecumenical councils have either hardened old divisions or have led to new ones. They have usually been marked by bitterness and recriminations, and by bringing face to face those who have differed, have sharpened dissensions rather than healed them. However, like the Council of Nicaea, they have often contributed to a clarification of the thinking of Christians, have made more apparent what the issues were or are, and have enabled the majority to reach a common mind. In this paradox is seen something of the nature of the Church as it has actually operated in history. While viewed from the vantage of the centuries, it is quite clear that the Council of Nicaea was an important stage in the attainment of the Catholic Church of a consensus of conviction on the relation of Jesus Christ to God. For more than a generation, it was not at all certain that the definitions arrived at by the Council would prevail. Indeed, it looked as though Arius, although anathematized and exiled, would win. The debate continued, the Arians accusing those who adhered to the Nicene formula of being Sabellians, and the defenders of the Nicene Creed charging that the Arians with making Christ a second and subordinate God. In a sense, the Arians were seeking to fit Christ into the monotheism towards which much of pagan philosophy had been moving. Well, that's quite a thought for people like us coming from a witness background. In contrast, the Nicene party was stressing the uniqueness of Christ and the Christian revelation with its conception of God. The outstanding defender of the Nicene position was Athanasius. To him, the real issue was the salvation of men. As he saw it, salvation is the rescue of men from the mortality which sin has brought upon them to participation in the divine nature. This, he held, can be accomplished only as true God is united with true man. He declared that he, that is Christ, was made man, that we might be made God. A man of stalwart character and deep religious faith and insight, his intrepid and unwavering support contributed notably to the eventual triumph of the form of the faith which is associated with Nicaea. As we have suggested, for years the tide appeared to be flowing against Athanasius and the Nicene findings. By the year 328, Eusebius of Nicomedia was back from disgrace and had become a trusted advisor of Constantine. In 330, only 5 years after Nicaea, Eustathius, bishop of the important See of Antioch and a leader of the anti-Arians, but one whose theological convictions were monarchian, was haled before a synod, charged with various offenses, partly his theological teachings and partly his conduct, was deposed and was exiled by the emperor. The friends of Arius urged upon the emperor his rehabilitation. Arius presented to Constantine a confession of faith which, although it avoided the chief points at issue, appeared to the emperor to be satisfactory. He was, accordingly, permitted to return from exile, and shortly before his death was restored to communion. Indeed, it was the bishops, summoned again by Constantine, who, meeting in Nicaea in 327, readmitted to fellowship both Eusebius of Nicomedia and Arius. Seeing Athanasius as their chief opponent, Eusebius of Nicomedia and his supporters sought by various means to have him put out of his office. In 335, at the summons of Constantine, who continued to be disturbed by the divisions in the Church, a council convened at Tyre. It heard charges against Athanasius, largely by the Meletians, accusing him of arbitrariness and cruelty in his treatment of them. Dominated by the Arians, it ordered him deposed. The Arians eventually succeeded in having Athanasius banished to Gaul. Just how they accomplished this is not entirely clear, but perhaps they convinced Constantine that he was a disturber of the peace of the church. Marcellus, bishop of Ancyra in Asia Minor, also a staunch anti-Arian, was accused by the Arians of Sabellianism and was driven from his see. Constantine died in 337. Shortly before, he was baptized by Eusebius of Nicomedia. He was succeeded by his three sons, Constantine II, Constans, and Constantius, and they divided the empire among themselves. They permitted the exiled bishops to return, and, in consequence, Athanasius was once more in Alexandria. The death of Constantine II in 340 was followed by the division of the realm between the two survivors, Constans, who had the west, and Constantius, who ruled in the east. In the west, the Catholic Church, supported by Constans, held to the Nicene decision, while in the east, the majority of the bishops seem to have been against it. Constantius sympathized with them, and the ante-Nicene cause was strengthened when, in 339, Eusebius of Nicomedia was made bishop of Constantinople. A synod in Antioch, in which Eusebius had marked influence, brought about a second expulsion of Athanasius from Alexandria and put another in his place. More to be said of this continued friction, and especially Athanasius's place in the establishment of the so-called Orthodox position next time. Put in a link to a series we did based on the development of Arianism in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, a series we titled Babel in Brooklyn, and how the Watchtower has repackaged paganism. It's 4 videos, and I'll put the first one on your screen.